Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. We received an overwhelming response, and the topic at hand that we're discussing today is going to be very interesting. So thanks for spending your evening with us. I'd like to just share how excited we are about starting this webinar. We've been preparing it for weeks now. The webinar today will be moderated by my colleague Mamta and myself, Mansi. Mamta is the Policy and Outreach Manager at the Good Business Lab, and I head the Research and Marketing Department. Interestingly, we have a very wide participation today. We have people from private organizations, brands, educational institutes, nonprofit organizations, from the humanitarian sector, and many more. And we look forward to an engaging 1.5 hours of discussion. As you all know, the webinar was primarily organized to bring in World Mental Health Day, which is tomorrow. I will hand over to Mamta to give you a little overview of the importance of the day.
Great. Thank you, Mansi. Hi, everybody. I'm Mamta. Let's begin by setting the context for the webinar. World Mental Health Day is observed on 10th October every year, with an aim to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilize efforts in support of mental health. As a step towards generating awareness and doing our bit, today we are going to talk about mental health at workplaces. We believe this is in tune with the common lifestyle today, most of which is spent working. It's estimated that 970 million people worldwide had a mental or substance use disorder in 2017. As you can see, the largest number of people had an anxiety disorder, estimated at around 4% of the population. More statistics actually show that the prevalence of these disorders was higher among women than men. Well, it is hardly a surprise that we have an all-women panel today talking about the issue. You can read more on our latest Medium article, which provides you with the sources to this information and more. Please check the link in the chat box. We'll introduce our speakers soon enough, but before that, we'd like to talk a little bit about our organization, the Good Business Lab. Over to Mansi to cover this.
Amazing. So thank you, Mamta, for the introduction. I think some of you are already familiar with our work and philosophy, but for those who aren't, and to refresh for those who are, Good Business Lab was incubated at Shahi Exports Private Limited, which is India's biggest apparel export house. We are a not-for-profit labor innovation lab, and we conduct research in manufacturing settings that employ a large number of workers. Our philosophy is pretty simple. We believe that worker well-being is good business, which simply means that taking care of the well-being of your workers, that is their skills and the health, we believe benefits not only the workers, but also the firm. In the work that we do and the research that we conduct, our long-term goal is to bring a paradigm shift in the business perspective towards worker well-being programs. We want businesses to stop considering such investments as, philanthropic and start making them a part of their core business strategy. We are a small organization and we're only growing. In future, we want to work with many more labor-intensive settings. And we recently took a step in that direction by initiating the setup of our Latin America office in Latin America. And we're working with Toyota and McDonald's there. In all that we do, we always try to take care of the health and satisfaction of not only the people we reach through our research, but also our own employees. And as an employee, I can vouch to that. In fact, one of our key focus areas at Good Business Lab, called Building Holistic Health, solely focuses on stressors to both physical and mental health that workers and employees might be facing on a day-to-day basis. To that note, I would like to request our co-founder Anant Ahuja, who is also the Head of Organizational Development at Shahi Exports, to speak a little bit more on that.
Sure, thank you so much. So hi, everyone. I just want to say a few words before we pass it on to the other speakers on the panel. So as Mansi had mentioned, GBL started with kind of 3 focus areas. There was unlocking female labor, closing the skill gap, and improving the work environment. And all of these focus areas kind of followed the journey of a female worker. But after a year, we realized that some of the projects we were doing, many of them, they focused on health, and they didn't exactly fall into any of the existing focus areas. So we needed a separate focus area for this sort of complex subject. And the topic of health is interconnected with our other focus areas. For example, it affects the work environment in many ways. In order to have a good work environment where people perform well, they need to be healthy and they need to feel good. And on top of that, I would say that a company's success really depends on the decisions it makes, and people are the ones making these decisions. So in order to make good decisions and perform well, we need to feel good. People need to feel good, the employees and workers. In addition, I would also say that, you know, businesses do have a unique ability to affect people's health, both by offering services at scale and also incentivizing and nudging people to use them. One particular area of health in the holistic sense, not just, you know, physical health, is this topic of mental health. And it's one that obviously, you know, there's a stigma around this topic, even globally, not just here in India. So I think by talking about this issue more, sourcing ideas for innovative projects, we hope to kind of remove the apprehension and resistance people view mental health with. And the last thing I wanted to say is, you know, I think, you know, one of our speakers is going to talk a bit more about this today, but in the development sector in particular, where organizations are trying to help other people, it's really important to make sure that we're all feeling good before we put our energy into helping others. And I guess the metaphor that comes to mind for this is, you know, if you think of sort of airplane safety instructions where they say that in case of an emergency, the first thing you need to do is secure your own oxygen mask before helping others. So I think that applies a lot here. So that's really all from my side. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's inputs and, you know, people's questions and feedback. Thank you all for joining. I'll hand it back to Mansi and Mamta.
Great, thank you, Anki. That was a great example too. Well, with that, let's jump on to discussing more on mental health at workplaces. But first, let us quickly take you through the format. This is also being pasted on the chat box for if anything is unclear to you and for people who joined late. Firstly, the webinar will be recorded and the footage will be made available on our YouTube channel later. If anyone has any objections, kindly let us know in the chat privately. Next, each speaker will present for 8 to 10 minutes, after which we'll take 2 questions for each speaker. To ask a question, raise your hand. To access this option of raise your hand, click on participants on your Zoom window. In the newly opened participants window, you will see this option on the lower left hand. Can everybody please try this now? So we're just sure you know what it means. Great, great. Wonderful. I see some of you figured this out. Well, text us if you cannot figure this out and we'll guide you. After this, we will call on 2 randomly selected people to ask their questions. This is between when the speakers are speaking. Once all the 4 speakers have presented, we will open the floor once more for comments or any other questions. At this time, you can pose a question to any speaker. Again, to ask, raise your hand and we'll call on you. As a general rule, we encourage speakers and participants to turn their video on when speaking. At other times, we encourage you to interact through text. Kindly mute yourself when not speaking, please. You can check our Twitter and Instagram handle at Good Business Lab to follow live updates and stories from the webinar. And we would love if you could share some too. Just remember to tag us. Over to Mansi to present our first speaker.